what's up? And welcome to the Nerdy Cricketer.
Hey D. Hey guys, welcome back. Episode number 3. Going to be talking about Mumbai Indians today.
We made it.
We made it, yes.
Iyer, what makes you think that you're a nerdy cricketer? Why are you a nerdy cricketer?
Well, the reason that that's because I know a lot of these useless statistics that I wish I filled my brain with something else. But why do I know some random guy's strike rate and average? I don't know. Probably it's because I used to spend a lot of my time in the childhood, collecting those cricket cards. Which
The Britannia ones that used to come.
The ones which, exactly. So I think I have the habit of remembering these numbers right from childhood. That's sort of habit hasn't gone away, I guess.
Nice. And you're going to be telling us about the team that you love the most.
Yes, my home team.
Sure. As in Iyer, you're not supporting Chennai, not supporting Shreyas Iyer's team, but
I am supporting my hometown. Well, the good thing is I do have the flexibility to keep changing my mind between Chennai, KKR, and Mumbai. But for today, it's Mumbai. Mumbai's always been the team I sort of supported. That's because I'm from Mumbai. And yeah, look, maybe if we can share the Excel screen, then we can look into it. And let's figure out what have these guys done?
Whoa, there we go. Let's just expand and yes. So we've got the squad chopped, sliced.
Oh, yes. Maybe zoom out a bit and then just sort of show the whole thing in one.
I've got, there you go.
Perfect. All right. So,
yeah.
That's perfect. Look, I mean, let's look at Mumbai, right, very quickly. What did they do? 4 retentions. I think it was pretty much non-controversial. Rohit Sharma, not going to let him go. Rohit Sharma, Jasprit Bumrah. I know there was a bit of chatter between Surya Kumar Yadav, Ishan Kishan, Hardik Pandya. But I think with the form that Surya's in, I mean, it was a no-brainer. I mean, he's going to probably give his best in the next 3 years, and you want to make sure that he's part of your team. So I fully agree with those 3. The 4th choice, I mean, Pollard, that's because you can only retain 3 Indians as part of the retention rules, and you have to have, if you do 4 retentions, you have to have 1 overseas in it. Pollard has always been with the MI.
No, you could go with 1 uncapped, was it? Or just
1 uncapped or one international. You could go with 1 uncapped, but you couldn't go with 4 Indians, I think.
Okay.
And I don't think they had an uncapped player that they would have sort of retained, right? Rahul Chahar already played for India, so there's nobody in there that they would have retained for like 4 crores. I think they had a bunch, Anmol Preet Singh, etc., but no one to retain for that big amount. So I mean, Pollard has always been part of the team. Even if you remember the Netflix documentary that came about Mumbai Indians, you could realize that they really value his leadership within the leadership. His opinion within the leadership group. He's always been that sort of stand-in captain for them whenever Rohit is injured. He's part of the team culture, the team DNA. I mean, he knows the ground. So I think they were comfortable retaining him. I think it's a sort of going to be 50-50, depending on how it goes. Remember, the next 3 years, Pollard is only going to go older, so I've got to see how that goes. I think they also, like, the other thing you could see is they went hard and got back a couple of their. I mean, Ishan Kishan for one. I mean, they broke the bank for him. I think a lot of the time for a huge part of the auction, I mean, they were just sitting silently, and everyone was wondering what they were supposed to do. But I mean, they went and picked up Ishan Kishan. I think they just went hard for him. Wicketkeeper, left-hand batsman, aggressive player, opener. So it ticks a bunch of boxes. And I think they've also sort of that Chofra jailbreak. I think that was a beautiful, beautiful move by them. It's a very Mumbai move. I mean, getting him for 8 crores at the end of the day, I think is a steal. I don't think the other teams were as sort of, I don't think they really realized, they didn't think that far ahead. So these guys clearly have got it. They're happy to sacrifice him for 1 season, even if he's injured, as long as they have him back, because him and Bumrah together basically makes it a 12-over contest for the opposition, right? And see what they've done, right? They've also got a very good backup in Timal Mills this year for Archer. I don't think Timal is going to play if Archer plays, and I don't think when Archer is fit, Timal will play. But For this year, I think he's a good sort of, poor man's Archer, if you want to call him that. The other thing I would like to point out is they've also picked up a bunch of very good sort of overseas picks. Like someone like a Fabian Allen, I think is a great buy for 75 lakhs. They picked him up at base price. He is a very powerful hitter, an amazing finisher, and I mean, brilliant fielder. Some of the catches he's taken, I mean, you should, if you check it out on YouTube, it's unreal, out of the world. And he's a very handy left arm spinner.
So, but it's surprising, right? SRH didn't actually utilize him last season as much.
So SRH was, SRH is being SRH. I mean, I think they just could not play him because they had to play Williamson. They had to, I mean, they weren't able to play Williamson for a big part of the season because, they were stuck with Warner, Bairstow, can't quite remember, but they were struggling to play Williamson, Holder, and, so they just didn't have a very good team and they had to play all their overseas players. Now, when Williamson's sitting on the bench, I don't think Fabian stands much of a chance. So I think, it was good for him to get out of there and get a new team. I think here Sams will start, but Fabian is probably going to come in later on in the season when the track gets slower. And yeah, now, so finishing off on their team, right? And they picked up some good sort of backups, like M. Ashwin, for one, I think is a very good pick. I know there was a lot of talk about MI not having a, frontline spinner, but you don't need a frontline spinner like Rashid when you have two frontline bowlers like Bumrah and Archer, because you cannot have I mean, if you pack the deck, they've got two solid gun bowlers. So, M. Ashwin is a very good spinner. He is not a Rashid Khan, or he's not like a UC Chahal, but he's never really got hit in the IPL. Whenever he's come out for Punjab, I think he's done really, really well. He always picks up wickets. Actually, if you look at his games, and even in the last game, he picked up 2 wickets up front. So he's actually a wicket-taking bowler. He's got the variations. He's got the leg spinner, got the googly, and he's sort of entering his prime as a leg spinner.
Right. I mean, to your point, I think MI typically has this formulaic team almost where people fit into slots, and that probably the roles that are predefined. It's almost like a corporation where you've got some sort of roles defined and a JD defined, and you come in as fitting in that role, because they've always had that leg spinner, be it UZ Chahal back in the day, or Mayank Markande, who came in and out, or then Rahul Chahar, who was discovered and honed by Bombay. So and then they've always had that left arm spinner, the Mitch left
arm seamer rather, Mitch McLennigan.
Then
or they had Trent Bolt, or now they have Sams and Unadkat. So they always had that.
So they've got this sort of defined thing, right? But to something that you've pointed out as well, do you see that all-rounder sort of there in this buy, or is it something that you'll probably throw some light on later?
I'll throw some light on it later. I think one of the key things is Mumbai has lost a bit of their all-round abilities in the auction. I think it's just natural. Before we go into, before we look at Mumbai as a team, I think it's very important to understand that it would be almost criminal to judge what Mumbai is today after the auction with what Mumbai was right before the auction. Because they had a superlative team, which was probably, they had one of the best T20 lineups that you could muster up within the, in franchise cricket. I mean, they got Rohit Sharma, Sky, Ishan Kishan, Hardik Pandya, Kyron Pollard. I mean, that's got some serious power, serious talent, serious all-round ability. You got Krunal, Hardik, Bumrah. I mean, so you cannot sort of compare. They're Trent Bolt and Bumrah. I mean, they're like, this. Remember one thing, this was not an overnight occurrence. This was not the team that they built in an auction. This was a team they built by making some very smart trades through the season. Mumbai has always been good at that. They're very good, shrewd traders. They've traded in, they traded in someone like a Trent Bolt, if I'm not mistaken, for somebody else. And they've done that well. They've picked players young and they've, guided them and developed them. Rahul Chahar was a nobody when he started in Mumbai. Actually, what about Rahul? Forget about Rahul Chahar. I mean, Bumrah, Hardik, Krunal, Ishan Kishan as well. or Rahul Char.
saw an article that said that Bumrah was someone who was, I mean, Kohli was told something
Yes,
about
Bumrah kya karenge?
exactly.
Yes,
So,
exactly. And so I don't think it's fair to compare today's Mumbai after the auctions with what they were before the auctions, because that was a team they started off at an auction, developed through smart trading, and developed their own players through the years in the system, in the ranks, and that's when they reached that pinnacle where they were. So they're never going to be that after an auction. It would be just unfair to everyone else to land up at that team after an auction. But I think they've managed to retain smartly. They've gone after one player who they felt was instrumental to them, Ishan Kishan. They've got some very good picks or value picks, I would say. Not world-class players, but good, serviceable first 11 players. And they've got some young talent in there that they would like to develop and groom the way Mumbai has been doing over the past many, many years. So maybe I can maybe we should dive into the first 11, right? And see what is the combination.
There. So.
All right. So I think the one thing would be, let's look at this, right? Like, who's going to be, I mean, this is an easy one. Rohit Sharma is going to open. Ishan Kishan is going to open with him. Rohit Sharma is not the fittest guy. I think there will be points where he is injured. I think you've got like Aryan Joel or someone like an Anmolpreet Singh who can sort of be that backup sort of opener for them. Backup opener / backup number 3. I think they have to go for that. Number 3 is Sky. I don't see them. I mean, these are all like nothing to debate about this.
Potential future.
Number 4. Yeah. I mean, Sky is just Sky. Just let him play. He's in the best form of his life, and I think he's just he's not even reached his prime. So they just let him do what he does. Tilak Verma, I think this is a guy they're very bullish about. Unknown, untested commodity. I mean, averages around 50 in list A cricket. His T20 record isn't spectacular, but that's likely because most of the young guys at that early stage of their T20 careers don't actually have the exposure that their statistics often don't give away their true talent because they just don't have the exposure, right? They would have got a few knocks here and there and stuff like that.
With Yashasvi as well, right? He's developing through the
absolutely. Tilak didn't do very well in the Under-19 World Cup, so he wasn't one of those Under-19 World Cup stars. But they've clearly seen something in him, and they've decided that they're going to go for him as a number 4. I think it's a punt like what they did with someone like Surya or Hardik or someone else back in the day. So I think Mumbai has the knack to make this work. I think they have Brevis as a backup for him at number 4. Again, an untested commodity. They've taken a punt on him. He was one of the Under-19 World Cup stars. Although he wouldn't be a like-for-like backup for Tilak, because if he comes in, then that's an additional overseas player, and that sort of messes up with the balance. We'll come to that in a bit once we go to the points of concern, right? I think Pollard is at 5, Tim David is at 6. I think these two can be interchanged, depending on the situation, but could be either 5 or 6. Number 7, Daniel Sams. I'm not so convinced about Daniel Sams as a pick. I think he's a bit like neither a batsman nor a bowler. Some sort of falls in between. One thing interesting about Daniel Sams is if you look at his record, he's a bit of a 6 hitter. He has hit more 6s in T20s than he has hit 4s. So, this is a very sort of Mumbai thing. They go for these power hitters and try to actually develop their hitting skills. Pollard was, when he joined Mumbai, was sort of that 6 hitter. He was known for hitting 6s, but he wasn't known for playing very long.
So is Tim David, as in he's also
even Tim David. Right. Yes. But they sort of look for that power.
Sam's at number 7, I'd be scared, given what
has already come before that.
So it's a little thin there.
I think look, we'll come to that, but I think Sam's at 7 is okay. I mean, they could also replace him with Fabian Allen down the line if the track starts spinning. I think Fabian Allen's probably a better batsman than Sam's for sure. He is also a much better fielder, and he's a very good bowler. Smart bowler, can give you 2 to 3 overs, even 4 overs on a good day. So if the track starts spinning, he's a left-arm spinner. He's not a wicket taker, but he sort of keeps it tight in general. I've never really seen him get hit as much. So he's a good replacement. Now let's go to the spinners, right? They've got M. Ashwin. I think personally, he's a very good pick. Mumbai never had the history of buying big bang spinners. I mean, even if you roll the tape backwards, they've never had superstar spinners because the Wankhede is a pacey track.
In his initial days, I mean, in Mumbai's initial days, Bhaji.
Yeah, Bhaji, but again, Bhaji was a test. Bhaji was a great test, but he was, I mean, T20 skills, he was not a T20 star, right? I mean, that was also the time where people were still trying to figure out the game and trying to understand, how, so very different time. So if you ignore the first 3 to 4 years, if you look after that, they never had a, world-class spinner. They've had good spinners who have got better under their, under the coaching staff of Mumbai Indians, and they've developed into world-class or, spinners that have eventually gone on to either represent India or their respective countries. I mean, be it Mayank, who also played a bit for India, or Rahul Chahar, or I think they had, Jayant Yadav before that, or they had, even Chahal. I mean, none of these guys. So fine. I don't think this is a problem. I think M. Ashwin is a very good buy for them.
Right. So yeah, I agree. I completely agree, I think.
And the price, right? I mean, getting a spinner for 1.6 crores when you see someone like Chahal going for 9 or 10, not to say that, they are the same, but I don't think the difference between a Chahal spell and an M. Ashwin spell is going to be very different. At the end of the day, Chahal might pick like 2 for 24 and Ashwin might do 2 for 30 or, 1. So I don't think the delta is going to be very much between the two. But if you have a backup where you've got like Bumrah, Archer and all of that, if you can sort of solidify that base and have the spinner at the same level, I think it's fine. I think they'll be okay. If Ashwin doesn't go through, they've also got Mayank as a good backup. If Mayank doesn't go through, they've got guys like Ritik Shokeen, untested players, or they can go for a Fabian Allen. So they've got some sort of flexibility in there if they decide, if things go horribly wrong. So that's fine. Then I think number 9 has to be either Basil Thampi or Jaydev Unadkat. I don't see anyone else playing. Look, Thampi, I saw him bowling the other day, 140, pretty strong, hit the deck kind of a guy. But in Wankhede, with the pace, you can also disappear quickly. And Unadkat is just Unadkat. I mean, people have been paying money for him for a very long time. If I ever wanted to be reborn as someone, I think that would be Jaydev Unadkat. I mean, the guy has got amazing deals from every single IPL franchise. He's a left-arm bowler, but he can't bowl at the death. He can't bowl in the power play. I don't think he can bowl in the middle. I'm just not sure what is the point of Jaydev Unadkat. But they still
domestically. Yeah. I mean, in the domestic seasons, he had one of the seasons where he had almost the maximum number of wickets through the Ranji Trophy season. But as you're saying, there was a time when India had 3 left-arm spinners, left-arm pace bowlers in the 11, and now we're struggling for 1.
Yeah. I think if Natarajan, I think that would be a keen. I think the only thing worth watching in that whole SRH fiasco is to see if Natarajan can actually hold his own and come back to what he was, because I believe that if he can get back to where he was, and he's quite motivated to do that, if he can get back to where he was, I think he walks into the India 15 for the World Cup, because they don't have a left-arm spinner who can bowl Yorkers at the death. Him and Bumrah together, lethal combination. Anyway, back to Mumbai, right? So I think number 9, Thampi / Unadkat. I don't see another. I mean, they could go for, I don't know, Arjun Tendulkar or, Arshad Khan or someone like that, if shit hits the fan. But I think they start with one of these two. I think they start with Thampi though. I think Unadkat is still a backup for them. Even when I heard Zahir Khan right after the auction, he saw Unadkat as a guy who can come in when the tracks slow down a little bit towards the latter half with cutters. So I don't think they're starting with him. They didn't start with him in the first game anyway. So yeah. Number 10, I think, is where they've got a pretty good suite. I mean, Timal Mills will probably play this year until he gets injured, as he always does. He doesn't have a very good injury track record. He couldn't played well in the 100, came to the World Cup, broke down, went back home. So I think, he's going to play until he breaks down. Then he's going to go home. And then Riley Meredith is going to probably take his spot this year. And then, of course, next year, we all know what's going to happen. It's just that should just not be allowed. I mean, Bumrah and Archer bowling 8 over, that is just, it's a 12 over versus 20 over. I mean, this is unfair. So I think Mumbai is,
Yeah, sorry to just question again. Do you think if
Yes.
Daniel Sams is removed, they'll probably bring in Unatkar and then see where, because they always want that left armor, be it
You
phase
know,
south.
uh,
Yeah.
I think they need Sams for his batting. I
Hmm.
don't see that as a straight swap. I don't think they will be comfortable going into game with the batting ending at number 6.
Right.
Unatkat, none of the so Unatkat can only replace Thampi or Ashwin or Mills. He's not going to replace Bumrah
So
ever.
yeah, unless he's injured. But
Yeah,
so yeah,
unless he's
no,
injured.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking that if they remove Sams and probably bring in, say, an Allen or someone, they will probably want to replace Thumpy or Mills with Teno Natkar.
Could be. I mean, I think they'll start with Thampi though,
Yeah.
just because he's got a better
Hmm.
track record. I mean, he's got good pace. See how he goes.
Hmm.
Unatkat comes in later,
Hmm.
and then they sort of like go from there.
Hmm.
Let's maybe go to the points of concern, right? In their squad, they have
Hmm.
a decent, good starting lineup. I think they've got nice picks, but there are obviously chinks in their armor. I think batting stock's pretty thin.
Hmm.
Rohit's not the most fittest guy. I think he will miss some games through the IPL. He invariably always misses out on a few games through the IPL season.
Hmm.
They are basically depending on Tilak. I mean, there is no backup. I don't see a batting backup for Mumbai. I mean, they previously had Siddesh Lad, and they had guys who or they had Aditya Tare. Like they had strong Mumbai Ranji players always in the squad as backups for these guys. And I'm not saying that Siddesh Lad is the same as Rohit Sharma, but given the time and the place, he knows the team. He's a proven guy. He's played Ranji. I mean, playing Ranji for Mumbai is not a joke. So if you play Ranji for Mumbai and you're good at it, you're pretty much a good place. But they have Anmolpreet Singh. They've got Dewald Brevis. But these are Anmolpreet Singh has been around with the team for a while, so he will be keen to grab that chance if he gets it, when he gets it. But there is a problem here. Batting is sort of thin for them. I would say that they need to see how that goes. Number 4, Tilak. I think it's a good thing they're betting on Tilak Verma. I think I'm quite bullish about him, but the odd chance that he doesn't come out, you then have Dewald Brevis as the only batsman that could potentially replace him. But then see what it already does to the team balance, right? Then you're forced to you're supposed to take out an overseas player. Who do you take out? You take out Pollard, Tim David, probably not. You're not going to be able to take out Sams. So the only person you can take out is, you can't take out Sams because you need the batting at 7. So you're basically saying if Tilak flops, Dewald goes in, you have to remove Mills, and then you're left with Thampi Unatkat. That's not an 8 overs that are very,
Or you just
it's
hope
not,
that
it's,
the tracks are slow by that time and you can play both Ashwin and Markandeya.
yes, or that, yes, that could be an option as well, of course. But 2 leg spinners in a game who are not exact, so it could be a punt, but it's a problem. Power play bowling, the third point. I mean, Bumrah doesn't bowl a lot in the power play. Bumrah generally bowls 1 over up front, and then he keeps 3 overs for the death. So what do you do? Who do you bowl up front? You have to bowl Thampi. You're forced to sort of bowl, same, even Mills. Mills also bowls more in the death. So you gotta bowl. Ashwin was bowling in the power play in the last game. Ashwin has bowled in the power play even for Punjab. He's a good bowler. He's a very skilled bowler. I think this is a very good season for Ashwin. He's found a home. I'm quite happy for him, because I felt that he wasn't exactly used in Punjab, just like everyone else at Punjab. I don't think he was particularly well used. He's much more skilled than what he has come out to be in Punjab, right? So, that's that. Then the other thing, right? All-rounders. I mean, remember, they always had Pollard, Hardik. So if you played Krunal at 7, and then you played Bolt, Bumrah, Chahar, and another bowler, Bhutanile or someone else, you had 4 overs, four bowlers, 16 overs, plus Krunal, 20 overs. Then you had Pollard and Hardik, right? Typically, that was what they did. So you went into a game with 28 overs, all of whom could finish 4 overs on their day. Today, because Hardik is gone, Tilak is an all-rounder, but I think he's more of a batsman. So let's see how his bowling develops. Unsure yet. Tim David can bowl a bit, but again, nothing spectacular, very limited. So what this has done already is they're sort of going into a team or into a game with just 28, 24 overs. Actually, even Pollard is not a 4-over bowler. Pollard is 2 to 3 overs typically. And typically Pollard bowls 2 good overs and gets hit in the 3rd over. So he's actually a 2-over bowler, on his day. So that's some point for concern for them. They will have to figure that out. Unless at some point they say, okay, maybe Tim David is not coming well. Maybe we replace him with Fabian. And then, Fabian can give you 2-3 overs. But I think Fabian at 6 is a bit too high for him. I don't think he's a number 6. He's more of a number 7 sort of player. Oh. He can hit those sort of 30 of 12, 30 of 10 sort of innings. He's a very powerful batsman, but 6 is a bit 1 number, 2 numbers too high. And then lastly, if I wanted to sort of like round up their issues, I think it's the finishers, right? In the past, they had no issues with finishers. They had Pollard, the 2 Pandya brothers. Between the 3 of them, they would mop up any single game. Today, what we're seeing is Pollard, I feel that people have started to find him out a bit. If you remember the World Cup that West Indies were playing, right. There were 2 things that all the commentators were pointing out. One is Pollard has lost his offside game completely. His back twists. Every time he goes for a shot, his back twists in his hand and everything goes on the left leg side. So bowlers have started bowling wide, full outside the off stump, just inside the tram lines. And Pollard is just unable to do anything with it because he's trying to hit those balls from outside the off stump to the leg side. And oftentimes it just goes for a catch or goes for a single. Secondly, they have found out where his game where his strong areas were. I still remember against the South Africa game or the Bangladesh game, he got caught by a fielder right behind the bowler. And this was a fielders that teams started placing just for Pollard because they found him out.
That was, I think, Chennai Super Kings is fined during one of the...
I'm not surprised. Dhoni has to be the one who comes up with this stuff. So, there you go. It doesn't surprise me one bit. And the last thing about Pollard is, I think we've sort of, if you remember the Bravo Instagram post about him being in Chahal's pocket, the point is he cannot play spin. His leg spin game is absolutely zero. He's not only struggled against Chahal, even against Hasaranga when Sri Lanka went to West Indies or when Ireland didn't have a leg spinner, or Adil Rashid. He just doesn't pick the googly. So people have started. So I think people have started to figure him out. His strong areas, his hitting weak points, his field placements. He needs to reinvent himself completely to be relevant for the next 2 to 3 years. Let's see how he goes. He's often a West Indies Pollard and a Mumbai Indians Pollard, but I don't know which one will turn up. The point is Pollard is not a very consistent guy. He'll give you 3 games or 4 games. He'll win you 3 to 4 games in a year. And that worked in a team where you have... Sorry?
That's also one too many. I think in the last...
2 to 3 games.
Probably 1-2 games at best.
2 to 3, I would say. 2 to 3 games. And that works in a team when you have everyone else who will win you 2 to 3 games as well. Like Surya can win you 5 games in a year. Pandya will win you 3 games. Rohit Sharma will win you 3 to 4. So it sort of works in the old Mumbai Indians. Will it work in the new setup with the current limitations? We'll see. All right. So just to wrap up, right? What are the sort of roles that we have over here? Opener, I think good. I think decent sort of backups. Openers, they've figured it out. Anchors, you can do Sky or Rohit. Potentially, Ishan can also anchor the innings. He's sort of...
I think they're one shot. They're one anchor shot and probably...
They're one batsman or 1 or 2 batsman shot, I think in general. That's not going to... That is a fact. Power hitter and finisher, I think they've got... On paper, they've got a good roster here. But there are some chinks in that armor and we'll have to see how that can be assessed. We'll have to see how that goes. I don't think this lineup is the same as Hardik, Krunal and Pollard. So I don't think it's the same quality. Power play bowlers, as I said, they just got Thampi. They can go for Unakkat as one of the guys, again. But, they're a bit weak here. I think Bumrah will bowl in the death. So they're a bit weak in the power play. Spin, I think, unlike most people, I think they've done okay here. They've got a couple of good spinners, good bowlers. And lastly, I think death bowling, this is just where they're going to win the game. They have got an amazing death bowling lineup. Even without Archer, they've got Bumrah and Mills is a great combination. With Archer, don't even talk about that. So that was that. I mean, overall, I think they've done okay. I think they're not the same as last year, but can't complain.
What are the chances you'd reckon for even making the say top 5?
I think they'll make it. Because I think I mean, I know that there's a bit of questions around them, but just Mumbai as a team have somehow found a way typically to sort of get through the finish line. So I know they'll typically start with the time where they lose a few matches and everyone goes crazy and then they just start winning. But, they're going to be they're definitely going to be a much better team next year once Archer is in there. There's no doubt about that. But until then, I would say, give them a 50 to 60% chance of qualifying into the playoff, this year.
Makes sense. I think so. The way I look at Mumbai this year versus what it was still before the mega auction is, Mumbai was a PE house prior to the mega auction, where they had these ventures that are flourishing, these players that have really done well under the Mumbai Indian shadow, and they're sought out by every investor in the IPL. So they had the Pandyas, they had Ishan Kishan, Sky. I think this year they're a little more on the VC side of things, where very, very young, untested companies.
They are more on early stage companies this year. They need to get them to that growth/IPO stage. And I think they've done that in the past very successfully. They've taken some startups, got them into unicorns and IPO'd them into blockbuster listings. Will they be able to do the same with a Murugan Ashwin or a Mayank Markande or a Devald Brevis or a Tilak Verma? I think there's one team that has two teams, CSK and Mumbai. Mumbai has done it before, and I don't see why they're not going to do it, especially because their support staff and everything has not changed. And B, they have some of the best support staff in the facilities. The Ambanis have really sort of given them a very good, they've invested in the training and facilities. So from a player development perspective, if the player is ready to sort of perform and learn, I think this is a very good environment. So I would give them I'm quite bullish.
Awesome, Iyer. I think that's a good comprehensive look at MI. So
perfect.
We move to DC for the next one.
Yes, perfect. Let's catch up in a bit.